who is participating in this, and our wonderful people who are bringing their knowledge to this, and then everyone who showed up. And for myself, I'll introduce myself because a lot of people don't know me, and I'm relatively new to the school here. Timothy Archibald, photographer out of San Francisco, and I'm a commercial photographer and editorial photographer, and now I'm having a blast working with the school teaching. We put this together because, in the commercial photography world, as soon as all the shelter in place came in and took over, there were an immediate response from photographers and from marketing people and from different aspects where people were trying to bring their heads together and bring their thoughts together and address exactly what's going on. And the community that, was apparent and right away was just inspiring. And so what I wanted to do was try to recreate some of that has already been created and bring it to the students and put it on a level that the students could relate to. And so I do feel that we're in this unprecedented time now, and things are moving very quickly, where like when we started to conceive of this, it's almost like fear dominated and people were just paralyzed. And it was almost like we felt like we were going to need to all hibernate. And, there was this idea, I think no one knew what to do, but it seems like every week things are changing rapidly. And after having lived through a couple economic disasters myself as a photographer, I did realize that as things shift, it does change opportunities for young photographers, and it changes the way older photographers have to navigate the field. And so I wanted to get all of you together and we can kind of share these ideas. And I have questions that really kind of came out of my discussion with all of you that I'll use to kind of lead this. But for now, let's go around and introduce ourselves, and I'll kind of direct this to give it some structure so that everyone who is in the audience here can get a feel for all of you and what you're up to. And just because she's right here, let's start with Russie Sanders.
Hey.
Russie.
All right, I'm Russie. I'm a photographer / art director / whatever you give me. What else am I supposed to be saying right now? Just introduce
I think an introduction to everyone who doesn't really know, there's a lot of people here who don't know you or what you do or what company you created.
Okay, I graduated from the Academy of Art, a master's program a couple years ago. And while I was there, I co-founded a company called New Revolution Media. We kind of specialize in kind of smaller commercial realm. I do a ton of food photography, a lot of product photography, and a lot of lifestyle. Mostly startups. I think those are kind of who I work with. We seem to be growing with startups. Kind of cool because we, are kind of in the same level and grow with each other and help each other out. Let's see, what else? I do photo, video, and I kind of act as producer sometimes. When you have a really small team and working with so many different startups, you kind of wear multiple hats. And so, I'm still kind of finding myself, but that's pretty much what I do.
No, that's real good. That's real good. Hey, let's shift to Braden Summers. Braden is a photographer represented by Tide Pools, works very beautiful. I've admired it for a long time. Braden, introduce yourself if you could.
Hey everyone, I'm a photographer director. I live I'm right outside of Los Angeles. I live in a little town called Topanga. And I graduated from the Academy of Art in 2008 and have been working photographer director ever since. And I shoot mostly commercial work. I've worked with clients like Walmart, Target, Marriott International, Natural History Museum of LA, MoMA in New York, PepsiCo, some pharmaceutical clients, and try to just bring a lot of color and beauty to all of my work. And whenever possible, if I can incorporate purpose-driven work into my personal stuff or my professional life, I'm always really happy to do so.
Yeah. And Braden has a project that really was powerful to me in the sense that it was beautiful and commercial all at the same time. And Can you just introduce that one project?
Sure. I'm assuming you're referring to All of Is Equal.
Absolutely.
It's a series that I kickstarted, or I funded through Kickstarter. I shot it in 2013 and launched it on Valentine's Day 2014. And it started off as a series of 14 images. It has since grown, but essentially what it was were these idealized images of same-sex couples in culturally diverse settings around the world, really just showing that all love is equal. And at the time, 2013, there wasn't a lot of commercial media out there that really depicted same-sex couples with a beautiful light, or really a commercial light, where it was like, you have the wardrobe, you have the makeup, you have the amazing location. Everything that I saw was really basic and not really that well produced, and just wasn't inspiring, especially as a commercial photographer who was creating that type of work for straight couples. I wanted to see that for couples within my own community. And so I did it, and it really just went viral. It launched on the Advocate's website and BuzzFeed's website on Valentine's Day. And for 2 straight years, I was just answering interview questions 2 or 3 a week, and getting some pretty major clients from that work.
Yeah, no, it's powerful. Let's move to Heidi. Heidi Government of the Workbook.
Hi, I'm Heidi. So I work for Workbook. Workbook is we're a marketing avenue for photographers and illustrators. And in my job, I get to do what I love to do, which is nurture my artists. Their success is my success. I came to Workbook from APA. I don't know if everybody is familiar with that is. It's a nonprofit photography organization, sort of a trade organization that supports photographers. So I had a really good training ground before coming to Workbook about what it means to support artists. So that's what I do. I'm kind of nurturing by nature. And so it's a really nice fit for me to create, and I create events, and I both at APA and at Workbook create a lot of different events that are educational and inspirational, and even just connecting types of events like portfolio reviews and things like that. So I love to be a connector, and I love to be a supporter. So that's what I do. I also, have a little, goofy bio thing, but I'll spare you all. And that's me.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Hey, Karen De Silva, thank you for joining us. Can you introduce yourself? Karen is with Agency Access. And what is Agency Access? What do you guys do?
Well, Agency Access is kind of a in-the-box marketing solution for creatives, or for artists that are trying to market to creatives. And so I'm one of 3 creative marketing consultants for Agency Access. And basically, the way I sort of look at it is we have a lot of products to offer if you want to piecemeal things together, or if you need a little bit of help. You might want to buy into a program that gives you the guidance and the insight, and just really sort of holds your hand through being able to market yourself to the marketplace, the creative marketplace. So I started my career very similar to a lot of our audience, probably in photo school. And my first job was really being a photo editor or a photo assistant and a stylist. And, I always kind of describe myself, and what I do is sort of like this journey that I took, and all the stepping stones that got me to where I am. So, as I was working in the studios, I learned how to be on set and understand, what sort of challenges photographers face, that insight. And then as I moved on, I took a position as a photo editor at a stock licensing company, which turned then into an art director position, and then the creative director position through ImageBank Getty and Photonica. And really, it was the first time that I understood that there were images that really resonated more with clients. And being back on set as an art director and really leading a team as a creative director, I really saw that there was a role there about, one person kind of keeping focus on maybe how to apply trends or key details and concepts to shoots that would make your images more relevant to the client's needs. And so finally, as I sort of landed in this like strategic creative marketing position, I did it a lot. I did it for myself for a while, but I then did it, I joined Agency Access, but it's about really connecting all the dots, right? To my career and my experience and just my knowledge of the creative marketplace. And, you know, if I had to sort of just bubble it down to like one statement, it's that, you know, through my experience, I've realized how important it is for a photographer to really connect what they do well to what a client needs. And if you use marketing well, if you can use your site and your messaging and really sort of sculpt this vision and, you know, show that actually you and that client were meant to be, it's a really good fit. So that's kind of where my focus is.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that idea of like looking at the challenges photographers are facing right now. And I think there's always something, and I think things are unique to that right now. Brooke Embry, we have not heard from Brooke yet. Brooke is my longtime pal and my agent, and I feel like I've known her forever.
We have known each other forever. Been a while. Yeah, so my background, I'm a wannabe photographer. I discovered photography in college. I was over at UC Berkeley and lived in a house that had a dark room in the kitchen, so that was pretty awesome. So after I took some photography classes at UC Berkeley, and then after that, I took some classes at the Academy of Art College, where somebody told me about the Santa Fe photographic workshops. So I went and interned and assisted there for a while. I'm a terrible photographer. I've really never been very good, although Jim Wood was amazing when I was at the Academy and really encouraged me and supported me. But thankfully, I found the business side of things. I was a studio manager for a photographer named Catherine Carno, and then I was an assistant to a rep named Arlene Johnson. And that's where I learned, she really taught me a lot. So in 2001, my best friend and I started Tidepool. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And we started Tidepool with the idea that artists have very unique voices, and a lot of times they're not picture perfect commercial voices. And we have always strived to help artists retain their unique voice and continue to build their creative vision without conforming their entire body of work into what will sell commercially. So Timothy and I have had some great successes. We've had some not complete failures, because we learned.
Yeah, complete.
We tried a lot of different things. I think Timothy, more than anybody on my roster ever, we've tried a lot of different things. So it's been an interesting journey. I still completely love what I do. So,
oh,
yeah.
for sure. Now, is it not true that you began Tidepool in September 2001?
So yeah, we actually, so at the Academy of Art College, in the same class, if I were actually like to go on to graduate, I had Eric Almas, Aladdin Ishmael, Katerina Bernardi, Dave Turek. Is that the one that runs New York Image Makers? He was there.
Well, David Turek. No,
Yeah.
we all know him.
Just like some of the greatest people ever. And it was actually Katerina Bernardi who suggested that my best friend and I start Tidepool. I was pregnant with my daughter at the time. So we started, essentially opened our doors around right after she was born. So that was June of 2001. So obviously not long after that, 9/11 happened. So we started in the worst of circumstances, for sure. And then also, we're still very much in business in 2008. And I think because we had just started out in those extreme, detrimental, awful circumstances, that we figured out how to get by. And if you don't have money, which we didn't have at the time, how you keep going, how you persevere. So yeah, this, I'm sure we'll dive into this, but the circumstances today are very distressing and concerning. But at the same time, I think those of us who have been through the 2001 and the 2008 and stuff go, okay, yeah, this happens. We'll figure it out. So
yeah, a little bit. The I wanted to check in with everyone to kind of just get a feel, because things really do check week by week. Like, what is happening right now, commercially in your world, and how are you reacting to it? And like, I know Brooke and I, we fielded a call. It was a conference call about a commercial job for a client of ours earlier this week, and none of it had to do with the creative or how we'd get, none of it had to do with the creative. It was all like, how is this thing going to get done with the situation that we have now? The health concerns and the travel concerns and all of that. And so it was interesting that suddenly it used to be like, how many shots can we get in a day? And it used to be much, much more functional. And this was really pulling back, and they were just trying to figure out how they could do it. But let's go to Rusty. What's happening in the world of, I know you just moved and that may have changed things, but catch us up to maybe how yourself and New Revolution Media is adapting to what's going on.
Obviously it's not the easiest, but we're managing. The first thing I did when I kind of, we actually took a retreat. We had a job in Japan, and the whole team just spent an extra week, and it was right when this whole COVID-19 started happening. And so we kind of already were talking about it and planning beforehand. And so by the time the shutdown happened, I think we already had been brainstorming about it, so it wasn't a huge shock for us. And the first thing I did was I reached out to all of my clients and said, hey, how are you doing? What's your plan? We don't really have a plan either, And so what ended up happening was any client I had who had a physical product, they actually were able to send or ship or drop off their product and not have to be present. A couple of them, I actually had them on Google Hangouts as I was shooting, or sending them photos as I was editing them or taking them or whatever. And so I've actually been really busy.
Right.
So I did all of that. And then I also do video. And so one of my clients, who's actually my personal trainer as well, we're doing this whole quarantine workout situation, like how to work out from home. And so we were able to actually do the videos. And since in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been editing them constantly and making them better. And then also focusing on imagery that my clients already have and how to change them or add text or whatever to keep them in the spotlight in social media. So I'm doing a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so, cause I know personal trainers are offering things like FaceTime training sessions. Is that what you did? You taped a FaceTime training session, or? I mean,
Yeah, so what we did was, what's really cool about her program is it's new. So right now we are pushing out how-to videos. So any kind of, squats and, things that people can do at home. And she's actually, with those little workout videos, she's giving people different goals and different sets and timing and different things, and personalizing them for each client. And then she's also offering a way to be on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, and be there while you're working out and talking to you as you're working out to tell you what to do.
Right.
And yeah, that's what we're trying to push out right now.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you were having clients drop stuff off when I talked to you about this thing, and I was like, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Braden, how are things going on in the world of commercial photography? Like, what is happening right now? Like, are things on hold, or how would you paint a picture of what's going on?
Well, if there was a white wall behind me, that would be the picture I'd be painting. It's pretty slow. I was up for some work with Brooke is also my agent as well. I'm with Tidepool, and it just disappeared. And you don't really even get necessarily an email or a phone call saying, all right, everything's on hold, we're gonna pick it up later. It's just the jobs you're bidding on, just there's nothing. It's just there's no emails back and forth. It's just everything's on hold indefinitely. So I think for me, during this time, I'm just kind of looking at some of my old work and trying to repurpose it and finding work that's applicable to the moment now, and shaping messaging around the work that I'm promoting to be applicable to what we're all experiencing. But for commercial photography, it just seems like most of what I do requires a team of, 10 to 40 people, depending on the project. And that just can't really happen right now. And so I've accepted that I probably won't find work in the meantime, but, I think what Tidepool is doing is really cool. We're trying to put together all the assets that photographers might have at home or the people they live with, and we can send that to potential clients and say, here's what we're working with in our homes, and if this might fit a potential creative, then we can create from home. But in the meantime, just getting by.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I hear that echoed from commercial photographers everywhere, absolutely. That idea of, I guess it's called like create in space, and there's been other ideas of it. Brooke, let me turn it over to you. Can you talk about what yourself and other reps have been doing to try to share with potential clients what your photographers have to offer during this quarantine time?
Gotcha. Okay, so Heather Elder is a friend of mine. She, from what I have seen, has been the most out there. Like I feel like I get one email a day from her, if not more, promoting her photographer's stock business. At one point in time, I know that she had a website where she promoted all of her photographer's stock photography. So I feel like, unlike Tidepool, where my artists promote themselves for their stock photography on different websites, like Sarah Remington's on Stocksy, Tamar Levine is on Gallery Stock, obviously there's Getty Images. We aren't organized in quite the same way. So I think that's been, I don't know if it's been successful. I don't know if they're getting sales from it, but I definitely see that as one way that they're reaching out to people. And then of course the create in place idea is something that's catching on. I just got an email from Workbook this morning saying that they're organizing that. So yeah. And then, there are some artists that are starting to work. So there's that as well. Yeah.
What would allow artists to begin working now where others, really can't move
So I
forward?
have an artist in Utah where it's open. It's open for business. They're giving out permits. The parks are open. That started just this past Friday. So legally everybody's allowed to go out and work. What that looks like and how to promote that has been something that Jordan and I have been working on since Friday, since we obviously all want the work, but we want to be smart, we want to be safe, we want to be respectful. So entering in that very slowly. And then my artists who have home studios have been able to very slowly and very carefully start to work again. And the create in place thing, I'm really curious. I'm thankfully friends with an amazing group of agents here in Los Angeles, and we have a group called Merge where we host events. So last week we hosted an art producer and agent happy hour on Zoom, and Los Angeles, where I'm based, is a surprisingly small town. We all know each other and we're all friends. So I expected this Zoom to be like, hey, how are you? How are the kids? And that lasted literally for about 2 minutes, and then the entire hour was about business. And everybody was saying, what do we do? Like, how do we make this happen? And it was interesting to me because it was more the art producers talking to each other about, okay, what do we do? There was the most vocal was an art producer who as one of the heads at InOcean, where they do all of the advertising for Hyundai, the vehicle. And she was saying, she said, you know, I've heard that some people are creating in place, but I mean, what does that look like? What do they have? What is, you know, how are we supposed to find out what that even is? Which was so exciting to hear, because I literally had just had a Zoom with all my tide pool artists who said, hey, let's do this. Let's promote our spaces. So we'll see where that goes. I think, I don't think that stock photography is a great fix. I don't think that creating in place is going to be the dynamic, amazing cure that people are hoping. I mean, I think everybody's going to be struggling. Everybody's going to be struggling. So, yeah.
For sure.
Brooke, you mentioned some of your artists have studios that are working. Are any of them shooting portraits, or is it all studio or still life work?
So I have one artist that it's just still life. Yeah. I have another artist who's in conversation, and that would be for a person, but that's still that's a very careful home studio. And then the project that Timothy and I had a call about on Monday, that's the kind of thing where it's an actual patient, and Timothy's idea was to photograph them in their front yard so that everybody could stay far away. And one thing about the way that Timothy shoots is that he often shoots it with very minimal crew. So he's kind of a perfect fit for this shoot that also wouldn't even take place until June. So I felt, and when it comes to people shoots, I think June is a good time to maybe start having that happen, but not before then, and certainly nothing in California, at least before May 15th. You know, everything has to be proceed with extreme caution, if at all.
Yeah. Karen, let's turn it over to you. What are you hearing from, say, the photographers you're working with, or the other, you know, what's the lay of the land right now?
It's kind of funny because, like, you know, marketing is sort of an exchange where you're really careful about how much you market or what you say or how you bother the client, you know, and for the most part, I mean, you know, if you're a veteran or somebody who's been around the block a few times, or just a newbie, you know, it's such a risk to market and to knock that person that's off the, like, the short list, you know, out of that space so you can do it. So like this whole, like, freelance photography thing, I mean, we're kind of veterans at, like, sort of being scrappy and, like, trying to figure out what to do. I think when you think about the client really, the risk is really on you, not the client, right? Like, the client doesn't have to take on a whim, believe that maybe you're the person to do it, and you know, jump on board and just keep your fingers crossed that photographer is going to do something. Like, you just can find a photographer that has a whole book of something that you might want to do. But right now it's kind of Wild West. I mean, like, every rule that is kind of unspoken feels like it's being broken right now. Like, you know, I get Heather Elder's emails every day too. And it's like, wow, like, it's so amazing. You can actually email every day as opposed to once every 2 months, you know? And just like Rusty was saying, you know, like, the first thing she did was reach out to all her clients. Like, the first thing we did is, like, we realized that actually all these people that are just unattainable, all these people that are always off, or their production schedules are so far in advance, we're all just, like, pivoting and sort of slowing down, and, like, their email marketing, you know, we were seeing, like, really great success. I mean, maybe not, numbers weren't, like, tripled, but, like, the quality of people that are opening and clicking to your site was amazing, you know? And like, I always think of that saying, like, well, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. I mean, I think a lot of brands, is riding on having something that's familiar to people, and then having people that follow you, and why would you change anything up? But right now everything's kind of broken. Like, and, like, you know, like Rusty said, she reached out to her clients. Like, that's what we did. We reached out to anybody who was about to market, or anybody that we were in marketing programs with. It was like, you know, like, I know it's your first instinct to worry about your survival, but, like, we all love this industry. We're all going to fight for it, just like the politicians are, and the small business people and the restaurants. And, you know, like, clients are more now open to a collaboration. Like, it's a conversation. Is like, hey man, how are we going to do this? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I was on the phone all yesterday, like a good chunk of yesterday, talking to a commercial director, and he was trying to figure out, like, he only got the project a couple days earlier, but he needs to like do a video of like all these different women saying this phrase. Like, so it's not just one person he has to deal with, he has to deal with like 15 people, and he has to like create this like spot. And, it's like all these challenges, but everybody seems to be in this really collaborative like moment where it was like, yeah, what are we going to do? And if you're not one of those photographers that feels like, wow, what I do is just not really, really relevant today, I think that just this openness to communicate and to just remind people, like I have a photographer that's up in Cape Cod, he's like out of Boston. His stuff is so like preppy and like just like New Englandy and stripes and rolled up shirts. I mean, jeans and running on the beach. And, we wrote a really nice note to sort of sit on top of the promos about like, this feels a little funny marketing myself right now, but I want you to know that at the end of the day, my work is about like really being happy in the moment and like, relishing the simple things. And, just a reminder that like, I might be somebody to collaborate with, or when everything feels a little more normal, like at least I've had this breathing room to sort of for you to get to know me. And, clients are writing back like, oh my God, I love your work. And, I really don't think we're going to be in production until maybe the fall, but, we're definitely going to give you a call. So it's a valuable time.
Yeah. Yeah. People have time to respond to things, and things they can engage in ways they haven't. I would say. So Heidi, you really have been at the forefront of like, immediately creating these webinars and getting this message out. What's happening today, as things are going so quickly?
Well, it's interesting, again, we've mentioned her several times here, but it was really Heather Elder who brought us the idea and said, hey, let's collaborate. And I'm grateful for that. It's giving me stuff to do to feel really productive. So I'm enjoying that part of it. And I feel like it ends my week with an up note. I'm always feeling positive from those webinars, and I'm gaining a lot of information. Last week, it was all CCOs. Before that, it was about finances. But to your point, it's like, I had a client who said to me, oh, I watched the first 2 webinars and it feels very out of touch. And I said, yeah, because that was 3 weeks ago, or that was 4 weeks ago. And,
yeah.
And when we did the first webinar, it was a Wednesday, we were doing a practice session on the Wednesday, and it was before everything shut down. And so the main thrust of our practice was talking about how do we communicate to this industry at large that you must shut down. There is a moral imperative to do this.
Right.
Well, by Friday, that conversation didn't need to be had because it was already happening. So the whole, like in 3 days, the conversation was completely different. So when my client said to me, these feel a little out of touch, I said, how about watching the one from yesterday? And see how you feel. And he wrote me on Sunday and he said, you were right, I was wrong. But it's where we are now is changing on a dime. And what's happening tomorrow is going to be different than today. Yesterday was one of my most stressful days in this entire thing. And
right.
I won't bog you down with why, but it's like, we're all going through, it's almost like the stages of grief, I think. Like we're all going through all these stages of the stressors. And then also I can't complain because I'm so grateful no one in my life is sick. I mean, good Lord, right? And I'm in this house with a light and food. Like, but I'm also stressed to the max because it's all about finances, right? So I think it's all changing on a dime. I'm so grateful for the webinars because I think they attack what it's about at that minute. This week, we're talking about emotional support and how to stay, leaning into your kindnesses and all of those kinds of things. And not necessarily the silver linings that we end our webinars with, but a little bit of that, what are the things to be gained out of this? And it's learning how to pivot. It's learning how to change on a dime. It's learning to be okay with all of that. I mean, I'm a control freak and I'm not loving not being able to control stuff, So, I forget your question, but that's, but that's how I'm feeling. I mean, I can give you a perspective of what we're hearing from creatives about how they're moving forward. I can give you a perspective of my clients, are they working and things like that. But we're all in this together. And I think those who are going to survive this are those who can lean into their kindnesses and know how to pivot and when.
Yeah, no, that's well stated for sure. That last webinar they're every Friday, correct?
They are, yeah.
Yeah, the last one was awesome. It was
the
awesome.
best one. It was the
It
best
was.
one. Because it was chief creative officers talking about the direction they see things going. And they also talked about being so tired of stock, which was heartening for me. It's like, I'm tired of using old assets. We're tired of the kids at home with the, in front of their screens. Like, we need new messaging, and we would love for you guys to help us. This is your opportunity to send us new messaging so we can all start creating again. I loved that a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I thought the whole thing was great. Hey, I wanted to also now shift this a bit to, really the concerns of someone who would be graduating right now. And I know I kind of talked to you all about this a little bit, but is there, if someone's graduating now into this economy, what is a goal that they can have? And what would be a use of the skills that they have, not necessarily photographic, but otherwise, that this new shifted economy could acknowledge or reward or something? And if your answer is like none, that's fine too. Because I do believe knowledge is power, and it's, and so, so I don't know. Rusty, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about what I would be doing right now if I, didn't already have a pretty solid clientele. It's, I think that one of the things that you could do remotely is social media intern. You work working with imagery, even if you're not creating it yourself, or, I think that's probably the only thing I can think of in the next month or so that would really, everyone is on social media right now. Everyone is on their computer. Everyone's on Netflix. Everyone is on something. And
hi, everybody, here we are again with.
Oh. And so I think that it's a really good time to utilize that, especially just starting out. Other than that, I think things that at least helped me in the beginning of my career, I was a receptionist at a creative agency.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I found you.
yeah, we met at Duncan Shannon.
Yeah, and I think that was probably the best thing for my career, because I was able to be influenced by amazing people, and it kind of led me in the direction that I'm in now, because I got to watch so many cool creative things happening around me. I know it looks different right now, but it's not going to be like that forever. So hopefully.
Yeah. No. That is good advice. Right, these entry-level jobs in the world that you want to get into eventually is probably something. Braden, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2008, and right away I got some pretty big jobs. One of them, before Brooke was even my agent, she helped me get. And it was really exciting to not even graduate college and still be like shooting professionally on huge jobs, and felt like momentum was growing and things were in a good direction. And then, 6 months later, the whole economy crashed for a long time. And I had, as part of my degree, I had interned with 2 photographers. One was an incredible experience, and the second one, the latter one, was a really horrible experience and just turned me off to like interning or assisting. And I say that because I moved to New York in 2009, shortly after everything crashed, and just reached out to all the photographers that I could find in New York and tried to assist. And it really seemed like, because everything crashed, everyone was keeping their crew tight. No one was really taking new people on. And I wish that I tried harder. I think that is what I would say now, is really, I didn't expand my network at that moment. I tried to get internships or assisting jobs, and it didn't work. And so I kind of gave up and just thought I can do this on my own. And for the next 3 or 4 years in New York, I just tried to be a photographer, and I didn't have a whole lot of success in that time period. I really wished, in hindsight, if I just tried harder to build my network and find other photographers who were taking on assistants or interns, I think that would have been incredibly valuable, just to have known more people. If I couldn't get jobs in that time, at least was making more connections and making myself known more among the industry. So I would say anyone graduating now, even if it's tough, I would say the best thing you can do is really just, get out there, connect with people. It makes such a difference when it comes to finding work.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I mean, as an assistant or an intern, is that what you were thinking? Like you view those things positively?
Yeah. I think my ego came into play back in 2008, 2009, because I had gotten some big jobs, and I felt like,
sure.
I did well in school and I was getting jobs. I felt like I don't really need to intern and assist anymore. And also, like I mentioned, the last gentleman that I had interned for just was really a terrible experience, and kind of just put me off. And so I didn't try hard enough. But I think looking back over the last 12 years, if I had focused more on building that connection and learning from other people who were established in that industry at that time, would have been really helpful for my career.
Yeah. I think a lot of photographers have tales of success early on, and it messes with their expectations of the marketplace and what they feel the market owes them
Right.
to some degree. Not you necessarily, but myself. I think I felt that at different times and stuff like that. And so I think that that is a common thing. I think that photographers feel like, wait a minute, I just did this big campaign. Why am I I'm not going to load the C-stand onto this bus? And
That's how it felt. I totally can relate to that experience.
I think it's very common. It's very honest. Appreciate that. Brooke, do you have anything?
Yeah, of course. Well, Timothy, you and I talked about this a little bit on Friday. But one thing that I encourage all artists, no matter what level you're at, is to find a way to have some bread and butter. I know for Timothy, he's always had an editorial career, and that kind of evolved into a lot of the corporate work that you're getting now. There's been a link there. One amazing, wonderful human being that was on the Tidepool roster for a while is Matt Sartain, who also went to the Academy of Art College. And one thing that really impressed me when he approached me about representing him is that he had across the board interned for everybody that's involved in production. So he interned for a location scout. He interned for a retoucher. He interned as, for a photographer. And I felt a producer, and I felt like him coming to any production that he came with so much knowledge and wisdom, but then he also came with the ability to wear all these different hats. So if the photography thing's not working out that week, reach out to, another area where you can be working. And I was trying to figure out, so how does that translate to today? How does that work if nobody's really working right now? So I think, mentioning social media, of course, yes, everybody's on social media right now. So maybe as photographers, if that's your number one thing is photography, reach out to the photographers that love and respect, and say, what can I do? Do you want me to, do research on social media? Do you want me to organize your files? Like, make some connection. And just to speak quickly about the workbook webinars that are going on, the one that happened this past Friday was amazing. It was by far the best thing that I've seen, and I've been trying to watch every single one that I possibly can. And it was very encouraging. And one thing that I heard from all these CCOs was that, we're going to open our doors again. We won't be able to be there, but we're going to start shooting again. We're going to go into production, and we need you to be prepared with solutions. So that's another thing, like with my artist that's in Utah, we can't just say, hey, Utah's open, let's shoot. We have to be very careful, number one, but also have our systems in place, like have our communication systems in place. How are you going to transmit images to when everything's going to be remote? And it will be for a while. But I think the silver lining just from the business standpoint is that because everything's going to be remote for a while, it means these clients aren't going to be spending this tremendous amount of money for these huge productions to travel and whatnot. So I think that even though budgets will likely be a lot smaller, I think that the need for the budgets will simply not be there. So hopefully the media buy will be the same, but the approach being more nimble will hopefully allow for business to be as usual to a certain extent. So any way that you can kind of figure out, well, first of all, just watch Friday's webinar, knowing that everything's going to change next week, of course, but still, there was so much good information in there. The idea of giving your treatment over Zoom instead of presenting a written treatment, which I think that that's going to happen now, which is kind of exciting in my opinion. I love all of my photographers, and I think that they're wonderful, and other clients getting to see that on Zoom, how they talk and who they are and what they have to share is totally exciting to me. Anyway, I'll stop talking.
Yeah, no, that idea of like, I mean, one thing that I think, we stress to the students or used to is, the power of the in-person meeting. Because the young generation, they're used to just like, well, I sent an email, they never got back to me, and we're always stressing this in-person meeting. And so that in-person meeting, it might not be able to happen for a while, but I think that I hate Zoom because I'm on it 24 hours a day now. But if I wasn't, the idea of doing a treatment and a presentation with Zoom, I'd love that. You know what I mean? It could just, this is what I'm like on set. You know what I mean? Like, this is what my personality's like. And I could see these things bridging. So, Karen, I'm wondering, with what you do at Agency Access, do you ever have people who are right out of school who are like, help, guide me?
Yeah, I mean, we have people that are out of school. We also have people that are changing gears or reinventing themselves. I mean, there's a lot of challenges that way where you feel like you're kind of starting from scratch.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes there's this like myth that you like the minute you get that big job, like it all starts coming to you. And I think you have to when you start thinking about your target market, everybody kind of aims for the same sort of space, that people are already in that spot shooting. And it really, like, the kind of advice I give my photographers that are really trying to get those first jobs is not to be shy about the things that are right in your space, what's right under your nose. And it's great to see things one at a time instead of like always like pushing out these big messages thinking that maybe somebody is going to connect with you. I mean, targeting something that feels attainable, connecting with them in how you can do things differently, or bringing skill set that might be tied to social media that they might not know. I mean, even if it feels sort of beneath you or boring or not really using the style that you're trying to put out there, your vision, sometimes creativity is really infectious, and you don't know why somebody that seems a little off is like being interested in you, and that they might be really open to trying to do something, especially if it's a side project, like not this big, more traditional campaign, but something that they're spinning off, and I would sort of give like my younger or greener photographers this advice that like, it's very hard to be a small fish in a big pond, like be the whale in the puddle, like but you got to find that puddle.
Right. No, that's good advice. Heidi, do you have ideas on this?
Okay, so can you rephrase the question? Because I think I got off track a little bit. So what advice for students leaving school right now? Is that what we're saying?
Kind of, but as is the nature of this, whatever tangent you want to go on, I'm kind of
okay. So for me, I think that we have to acknowledge that this is a nonstop hustle business anyway. Mm-hmm. And it always has been. Mm-hmm. So be ready for the hustle, right? And it's going to look it's going to have a lot of different ways that you can look at it, but you have to know yourself and your skill set in order to market yourself at all. Like, what is it about you that is unique than your peers? What are you bringing to the table that is unique than the photographer who's been sitting there for 20 years or 10 years or 5 minutes? So the basics of marketing, in my opinion, are going to stay the same. There's different opportunities now. I mean, social media 5 years ago is not even close to what it is right now, and probably won't be what it looks like 10 minutes from now, right? So you guys are in this unique skill set place. Like, I talk to my sons about social media and I'm a moron comparatively. And I'm talking to a 16 and an 18-year-old. And I'm pretty savvy about social media, frankly. So at least currently, but they know what's coming next. And so do you. You know, so I think that Brooke used the greatest word, and it was the word of the day on that webinar last week, which is being nimble, being understanding the pivoting that's going on right now and where your skill set is unique to somebody who's been in the business for a long time. Like, you guys approach things differently. I feel like I'm going to say your name wrong, Russi. But the thing that you're describing is a unique spin on what was happening 10 years ago. I mean, what you're doing is A, mining your own backyard, but B, bringing something to it that's unique and interesting and really effective. I mean, finding those roots, that's what's going to matter, specifically now, but always. You know, marketing, when you're marketing, if you are just being like, hey, look at me, that's not marketing, right? It's more, you always are bringing solutions. You're always answering a question. You're always saying something. And now more than ever, that's what your marketing has to look like. But you have to really understand the structure of, who am I? What am I bringing that's unique? What kind of imagery am I creating to communicate that? Who am I sending it to? It doesn't start with the email out the door, right? Everybody knows that, but you really have to delve into what each one of those things means to you, and who is the client, who is the client that makes sense to? What is the product and service that makes sense for what you do? And there's a lot of thinking and targeting, and you guys actually have an opportunity with this sort of down moment to really explore those questions and get those answers and then roll it out. But my biggest advice is, know that this is a nonstop hustle business in the best of times. And there's only so much food at the plate, and there's a lot of hungry people. So make sure that what you're saying is clear, simple, and that you have an integrity from that first thing I mentioned to the last thing I mentioned, in terms of not integrity, but that they match, that they make sense. So that's my advice. And in terms of like reaching out to photographers and so on, I think that social media is a brilliant route in that regard. I think that there's people who are in this business who are like, I so don't want to do it. Even though they know they have to do it. You guys do it without even thinking about it. And I think
exhaling.
I'm sorry?
I said exhaling. They do it as if they're exhaling.
Oh, I thought you were saying, Heidi, breathe, you're talking too much.
Yeah, I meant that. No.
Well, I mean, I always make the joke, I'm from New York, so I don't have to breathe when I talk. But knowing your skill set and what you bring to the table, what you guys bring to the table is a fresh perspective. It's unique. You grew up in a completely different time. And sometimes we speak different languages, but at least with me and my teenagers, I love the language of young people right now. I love the way you talk, the way you communicate, and then it's super clever, it's really smart, that you can bring to the table to a photographer who's been maybe doing this 20, 30 years and breathe fresh life into his business while building yours. And that's a collaboration. Remember that that your peers are your collaborators, and that together you guys can really do you can do great things. I was saying this to Timothy, like, no photographer should be making their own logo, right? So as you're building your business, create your team. And I feel like this is what Russi did. It's like, you create your team. There's a designer that can help you with your logo and creating your site. And then you can help that designer with their site and the imagery that they need. And you create these collaborations even when you have no money. And then those collaborations, you know, maybe your team 10 years from now is going to look vastly different, but knowing how to be a team player, that is invaluable. And having those areas where you learn to work together and you create things that are going to help your business and help their business, brilliant. So that would be my advice. I think that was a lot of stuff.
No, that was good.
Can I add one thing, Timothy?
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to say, so what I've seen from doing this almost 20 years now is that the photographers who focus on doing one thing and doing that one thing really well are the ones that success the soonest and keep it the longest, from what I've seen. And I would think that in this climate right now, the temptation might be to just put everything out there and say, I can do this and I can do this. You guys probably need a lot of stuff, but I would still focus on finding yourself, finding what makes you unique in this industry. We're all unique no matter what. And really, really continuously present that unique vision as streamlined as possible. Streamlined is not the right word, but hopefully you know what I mean.
Branding. It's branding.
Yes, branding, exactly.
It's really knowing who your market is and what your brand is. And it starts with all of those things, and your imagery is the extension of that.
Oh, that's well stated by all of you. Thank you for that. You know, now thinking of the content of things, like I remember after when the economy tanked in 2008, and then also around 9/11, like irony, humor, it was kind of gone then. And there was this idea, like any holiday campaign was essentially a company saying, you know, from the bottom of our heart, we wish you a Merry Christmas. Where by the time the economy got better, people were being snotty and funny and ironic, and humor and advertising bubbled up more. And so I'm wondering if you all have any opinions on how what's happening now, how is that going to change what the message is? You know, like, do we need humor now more than ever? Do we only need sincerity? Can anyone reflect on that?
Don't you think, I just saw just a personal note, like this is the first time ever that everything we do has like these long trails, right? Because we see it like echoed and mirrored over and over again through social. I mean, like having likes and views really validate things. So I think before you didn't really have, it was always like this one-way communication, but now it's two-way communication, and things are tested. And like I would say humor is a really big part of like what we're doing right now. And it's because of the things that are going viral, and you're actually like testing the marketplace by putting something out there. And when you look at, I mean, I have a son that's 12, and we've been going on walks in the morning, and I was telling him that when I was his age, in English class, we had to do this speech. And I was telling him that my speech was on advertising. It was kind of funny because it was like all the tricks that you use when you create a commercial, right? And here I am like being involved in this marketplace. But it isn't until like this moment where like everybody goes to bed and it's one place, and then you wake up and it's something else, that you realize that marketing and advertising have this like big place in culture. I mean, like everybody like had to make sense of like what is going on and where are we and where is this going? And you know, you had these themes that were tied to like staying at home and connecting to people but being distant, and all of a sudden, and I think it was probably Nike that did it first with the like, if you ever dreamt of playing for the world, stay at home, play there. But there was this like overwhelming message of like, we are all in this together. And yes, it worked for like Coca-Cola and AT&T and Lowe's and Apple and Nike, but the world really like we needed like a unified message, you know? And so like being able to see these things like they're almost like movements, you know, sort of like bubbling up in like all these different platforms, and seeing sort of where one thing starts, and it's like a spark. It just like ignites, you know. You've got little towns all over the country, hiding teddy bears in windows, or like drawing hearts on things, or, holding signs for Instagram. So, my head kind of goes to trending, like, and all everything's like a cause and like a reaction, so when you look at like the marketplace, you see the trickle down from what's just in our face, like this platform of sharing things and testing things and seeing how far can you push humor, or do things have to be sentimental? I mean, I think more than ever, like, we can kind of test that and see it without taking like this giant leap of faith with like a campaign and doing something that might not seem like it's relevant.
Interesting. The any opinion on that? Let's hear from the photographers. Braden, do you have any response to any of that? I would assume your message is not going to change,
I mean, the type of work that I create is it is somewhat varied from fashion to commercial lifestyle, but in terms of the emotive quality of my work, I would say it's pretty consistent across the board.
I agree.
And so, I can't say that I'm personally going to run out and shoot a bunch of really comical stuff. The first thing that came to mind when you were asking that question is what is the mood of the work that's going to be created? I immediately went to what type of content am I craving to consume as a photographer or as just a human. Mm-hmm. And so I'm watching way more TV and movies at night. And, I think Heidi mentioned earlier where there was we're all sort of going through these stages of grief. How long is this going to last? This is really depressing. Some of us know people who are sick. Some of us know people who are dying. Everyone's out of work. Sometimes I just need levity. Sometimes at night I'm watching a rom-com. Sometimes I'm just I want to feel what's going on. I want to watch these apocalyptic movies that I can relate to. And sometimes I'm just I just want to watch my favorite movies for the last 30 years of my life. And what are some of those? I just want to feel nostalgic. So I don't know. I would say the mood is different than the economy crashing in 2008, where it was a singular thing and you go beyond it, or 2001, where there's a plane crash and everyone is experiencing something so quickly, and then there's the stages of grief that go beyond it. In this moment, I really personally am feeling it's all over the place and it's different day to day. Sometimes I'm just really sad. Some days I'm just I just want to have a happy hour with my good friends and just have a good laugh. So I don't know. I personally am feeling all over the place, and I don't know that. I'd be surprised if the messaging from all of these brands is really super consistent, because I think people are going to want to cater to a lot of those different moods.
Yeah, no, that's well put. Yeah, I felt the sadness after 9/11 was so profound, and it was so deep, and it was death came to us or something. But this, even though the numbers are enormous here with death, people are leading normal lives and watching Netflix and having Zoom meetings.
And it's drawn out.
Or something. Yeah, it's different. And yeah, different days you want different things. So yeah, I don't know how that's going to affect the marketplace. There is a video that now makes fun of all the advertising that is being done over the past couple of weeks, like Budweiser's advertising, Starbucks advertising. And, looking at that, I felt mixed emotions where I enjoyed the laugh, and then I felt all of us are part of this message too. I don't know. It just if anyone has, put it in the chat. Heidi, do you have something?
Yeah, I just, I think I'm going to say your name wrong now. Braden. See, I knew I would.
Aladdin.
Oh, there you go. That I'll remember. But I think that you said it best is think of we're all consumers too. So I think when you start talking about your favorite brands and your favorite things or your targets, these are, the places that you're going to market to. What would you want to see from them? And I think you hit it right on the head when you said, you're not just a professional who wants to provide this, you're also a consumer. And the other thing I wanted to sort of say is when we're talking about social media, do the same thing. We're all consumers, right? What do you want to see on social media? What is going to make you laugh? I did a panel in New York, it feels like 5 years ago, but it was last November, where they talked about how where the creative buyers were talking about how they utilize Instagram. And they said, I don't find photographers on Instagram. what I do is I find my entertainment. I use it for entertainment, just like you do. I love this cat coming into the picture.
Yeah.
I use it for entertainment, but then when I find somebody, an artist that really entertains me, then I start to think about how I can utilize them, right? And so now is like even more intensified in that regard. So, as Karen is saying, it's like we have this time where you can experiment on social media and see what resonates, see what doesn't, and then that can sort of, that's sort of your milkshake that brings the boy to your yard, right? Horrible reference, but it is what can grab attention, and understanding that. And I also wanted to say one other thing, and then I'm going to shut up. You guys, you students, you graduates, you're not tied to the past in the same way everyone else is. And like Brooke was saying, she came to fruition in a very like crazy time, and so she's more nimble and more and just more accustomed to how to handle those things. You guys are going to have that same experience, right? And so you're not tied to the way it's supposed to be. You can really invent for yourself what you want it to be. And that's that's a silver lining if ever I heard one. So that was it.
Yeah, that was good. Rusty, do you have anything on this topic?
I think that I can relate to everything that was just said. I too feel like I am all over the place. I wasn't able to give my friends a hug and say goodbye before I left San Francisco last week. So like some days I'm sad, but then also some days I find myself sitting on the phone or on FaceTime with my family or friends for hours, finishing a bottle of wine or, whatever it is, and feeling normal. And so I think that as far as tone, again, I feel like so subjective and I think it's different for everyone. And so I'm really interested to see what these companies are coming up with once, we get back, or as we're getting back to things, when, there's only 10 people allowed in a room, or, and so on. And then to speak to what Heidi, you said about how, as young professionals, there, depending on how far you are in your career, you're not really tied to what it's supposed to be. And I feel very lucky that I'm kind of in like that between phase where I was just now getting a routine and I'm kind of going back to the grind. And so I think that I'm in a good place where, I'm not expecting anything, and it's still, I feel like I can adventure a little bit now, take some drone classes or, have some fun with some new ideas and new, techniques and whatever. So yeah, there's my rant.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I do think like in putting together this, I wanted to talk to photographers at different stages in their career. And those who were kind of like my contemporaries, they were just like, I have nothing to say. You know what I mean? Like they were just overwhelmed by having to deal with this thing again. And so, yeah, there's something about the flexibility when you're new and you're young and you are willing. Yeah, you don't know the way things used to be. That I do think, kind of changes things and makes it a bit like just easier to be flexible. The one thing I didn't announce in the beginning of this is I know a lot of people want questions and, that will have questions. And so I'd encourage everyone to type their questions into the chat. But I think that it's under control enough that if anyone wants to speak up, please, you can turn on your microphone and, and have a question. But I have a question here I wanted to read from Shazad. He said, is it good to be able to do everything but market only one thing? Does it help later in the career? And so I think what he's saying is not like, is it good to be able to have all those skills, almost like where we were talking about Matt Sartain had an awareness of all the different aspects of a production, but just market and focus on one. Can that help, or any views on that? And I'll open that up to whoever wants to chime in. Yeah, Rusty.
I feel like even when I was in, like, as far back in high school, I was that basketball player that wanted to play every position. And I think I do the same thing in my career, but that's because I really like being a producer. I really like being an art director. And I really like connecting with people who are doing something different than I am within the same project. So for example, when I'm on a video, when we're doing a video, you know, I like to be able to connect with the video editor and talk to him, knowing what he's doing at least a little bit. I could never, ever, ever edit videos the way he does.
Mhm.
Or, you know, or, you know, whoever's doing my logo, you know, I like to know a little bit of everything, not necessarily to say that, oh, I could be paid for this, but just so I can connect with my peers in a more, I don't know, a different way. It's easier for me to ask the questions I need to ask or whatever, or be that person in between the client and the video editor or whatever.
Oh, it gives you a respect and a way to converse with those you're collaborating with, for sure. No, for sure. Absolutely. Does anyone here have questions? I'm going to scan through. How about you folks? Do you have any questions for?
Well, I have a question.
yeah.
I have a question on the last question. When you
Yeah,
say,
sure.
when you say do everything, are you talking about different things that you have the skill set to shoot, or are you saying that I'm a motion person and I have this art direction skill and I also have this, like what? I wasn't clear what he was asking, or she.
He is here. Shazad, you want to address this?
Yeah, sure. So what I was asking was, I shoot still life, and I can do outdoor shoots, and I can work the studio just as well. Should I showcase all of that, or should I just showcase stuff that relate to each other? Like maybe just showcase that I can work in a studio environment as well as I can work outdoors, and not really highlight on the still life aspect? Or what's the best way to market myself?
I think you can have all of those skill sets, but the people that you're marketing to are different for all of those skill sets, right? So if you have wonderful still life work,
Yeah.
you're not going to send that to your lifestyle client. So you have to categorize. I think they can exist together. I think that specifically somebody who does food, who can also do lifestyle, well, that's going to matter, right? For the food life and all of that stuff. So I think you can do all of those things, but when you're reaching out to those clients, the imagery that you're sending them is different because you want to be access to their product and service. So that's where it makes sense. And
Right.
you can have them all on your website as long as you don't look like 3 different photographers, right? Like there's a thread between all of them where there's a consistency, or the way you look at something, I'm going to know it's the same photographer. But if it's like vastly different styles, I think that might be problematic. But beyond that, I don't see a problem with having them live together. You just don't market them together unless it makes sense for that client, which is again about targeting and solving their problem and having something to say to that client.
You know, there's a real subtle difference in a website today than maybe the website we had like even 4 years ago. I think like 4 years ago, as photographers, it was about like, these are all the things that I can do, or these are all the things that I've done. And like part of it's validation, and part of it's showing my skill set, and part of it's like just exploring like almost like a best of. So if anybody were to get there, they might see something that they like. And I think today's website slightly different, in you know, a lot of that being that that there's a lot of competition out there. But I think that your website today has to really own something. It has to say that this is what I want to do for you. And so it's very hard to do that if you have all these different focuses. And I always use the analogy of a restaurant, right? Like just escape the photo world for a minute. Like if you told me that you really liked pizza, you know, and you were coming to my town, I could tell you about this great little place in Little Italy where you have to go down this alleyway, and it's like a whole history. It's like there's even like rumors that they started pizza there, and that like the special sauce is from their grandma. Or I can tell you about a restaurant that's that's pretty good. And it's great if you've got a group, because you can also get a good burger and you can get a nice slice of pizza, and then you can also get a good salad or maybe some salad, or, you know, all different types of food, but quality, right? Like, so if somebody is a food brand, are they going to believe that you that just does food, are you going to be the best photographer because they believe that you're the one that's going to do what they need? Or are you going to be the photographer that can do everything a little bit, but well, and, you know, will that person lead them to the kind of messaging or imagery, you know, collaborate with them that they need?
That's an interesting take on it, for sure. Does that make sense, Shazad?
Does. No, it definitely does. Yes.
Cool. Cool. I have another question here. Someone says, I've been doing time lapses of the empty tourist spots in the city and to try to stay creative. Is that something that could be marketable right now? Probably hard to answer. I don't know. Does anyone want to tackle that? Sounds historically important.
You think of the client. Who's the client? Is it the city itself? Is it whatever that restaurant is that is in the visual? Is it, who's the client? That's the only way to answer that question is, who's the client?
Right, right.
If you can figure out the client, then you should market it.
I've been seeing some ads or just different artists posting videos and photos of very similar content. And I think historically it's really important to have stuff like that. And I think that, you know, again, who's the client? I don't know, really. I think a lot of news sources might really like that kind of content. Or if someone's doing a documentary later on this strange period that we're in, I think that'll be really useful. But again, yeah, it's hard to tell right now.
Honestly, I didn't have a client in mind when I started doing it. It was more of a documentarian purpose behind it. I am much more commercial and fashion centric, but with how everything is going, there was no way I could get models or the setups or the shoots. So I started taking a tripod and going to the empty spots of town and sitting there and doing time lapses. And I'm really enjoying them. I've got a lot of good feedback from them, but I'm only in my 4th semester, so I have 4 more semesters to go. I wasn't working on marketing yet.
I mean, this seems like this type of work you might want to put on stock and gauge the interest in that type of work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's also the idea, like I am a big believer that one thing leads to another creatively. And I wouldn't even think about marketing anything like that now. Just explore it and enjoy it. And it may lead to your next thing that is more commercial or something like that, You know, the one thing I was struck with here, being so deep with the students now, is their utter flexibility to just shift gears where their project that they were working on for their thesis project to get a graduate degree at the school, well, they can't do that anymore. So they are just literally making a U-turn and doing something equally fascinating, digging into it, or commenting on the Times. Like, it's very exciting. It's exciting to be around that creativity, flexibility, and it's almost like it was like a blip on their screen that they had to like fly back to China and leave San Francisco and just start creating in their mom's house, and it's on, And so the thing that, with that in mind, I mean, that's been very inspiring to me. And then with these webinars that Workbook has hosted, the last one that we keep referencing, Heidi did bring up this idea of like, look, we need to end on some positivity. We need to end on some hope here. And we have these challenges ahead of us, but let's go around and try to talk about some bright spot or some positive thing that's come from this like quarantine period. And to me, it was seeing the students like just shift gears and hit the ground running, and that creativity. But I wanted to go around and see, as we kind of bring this to a close, what is the can we all share something positive? You want to start, Rosie?
Yeah, I'm a naturally really positive person, so this is easy for me. I think that in the last month or so being at home, I have had more opportunity right now to connect with other artists and other people like me, like everyone that's on here, through all kinds of platforms, through LinkedIn, through Instagram, through Facebook, through a simple text message, or even some clients that I haven't worked with in a while. We've been chatting about what we're going to do when we get out of this. And I think that there's this weird sense of community that I've never really seen before in my life, even though we're not right next to each other. I think people are spending more time connecting with people like themselves or friends and family. And I think that's really important to embrace right now.
Oh, that's well stated. No, you see it and feel it every day, really. And I think even the ability to put together something like this, like you guys are all busy. The idea that we would all get together and put this together so quickly, that would never happen, really, really. So no, and I thank you for that. Karen, do you have something?
Darn. No, I'm just kidding.
You can say no. You can say no.
The East Coaster. Yeah, I'm like quite the realist, but I have to say it's really great to have some breathing room for one, like things that I just took for granted, like your health or like family, friends that, you're just so busy. And it's, our industry is so big, yet, watching like Tim Tatter do like raising money for all his assistants and production, or Magnum doing like the 6x6, like it's just like everybody sort of trying to be effective, like trying to make sure that everybody is okay has been really great. I'm kind of a survivalist though. Like I have to say it's fascinating to watch. Like there's really two types of people, right? The ones that like are still in the corner, like waiting for someone to tap them in, tell them what to do. And the ones that like just leaped up to do something, and even watching industries. I mean, we've made so much ground in like technology, yet I think I didn't even realize how tethered we were to our legacies until like within 48 hours we had to sort of redefine ourselves, like telehealth and like Zoom calls for work, and then like everything just broke out of its shell and like changed, so I'm kind of really excited for when people feel a little more grounded and things feel a little more secure to see like when the dust settles, what it's going to look like around.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. That's fair. Look into the future for sure. Braden, anything you're thankful for?
Before all this, it's really easy to stay busy throughout the day, like answering marketing emails, talking with my agent, or, budgeting on jobs or whatever. And I think the breathing room is really nice, and I'm finding it's helpful to come up with what's next. I have time to set aside to brainstorm what my next project will be, and I'm like developing it. I'm actually really excited about something, and feel like it's been a little while since I've been excited about the next big project. Instead of just shooting like a little personal shoot here and there, I'm like, all right, I think I've got a pretty good grasp on what I want to work on and focus on next. And I think it did take the slowness to really get there. So I'm grateful for that.
No, yeah, it gives you time to think and plan if you're someone who is arranged by that. The Brooke.
Well, things I'm thankful for. I'm definitely thankful for my family. This has been really trying on those of us trying to raise kids and work at the same time. But, there's definitely a silver lining under there. Like, so grateful for all this time that we have together. This undivided time is really, when it's wonderful, it's wonderful. When it's not, it's terrible, but we'll get through it, right?
Yeah.
But also I'm so grateful that I'm seeing artists connect to each other. And it's funny because I'm always grateful for my agents that I'm connected to, and thankfully we're having a happy hour on Friday, but I feel less connected to them than I usually do. But I'm seeing between the artists and stuff that a lot of connection is going on, and that's so important, because what I hear a lot from artists is that they feel like they live in a vacuum, that they don't know what else is going on in the world. They don't know, what is that, what are other people bidding on, how are they promoting, what do their emailers look like? And I'm starting to see a lot more shared resources, sources, including sources of inspiration, and I love that. That makes me really, really happy. So yeah.
No, these things bring people together for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I always had this theory that during the boom times, all the photographers were cutthroat, and when it was bad, everybody was so thankful to see anybody get any good thing in photography that they were their cheerleader. Heidi, you are the creator of this ending on a positive note. Do you have anything?
Well, for me, my silver lining is, my family's safe and we're healthy and we're together. That's a gift. I find myself leaning into empathy, and it's almost like it was a reset for me. I'm like Russ, I'm a very positive person. I'm like super energetic. I'm very passionate. I'm all about it. Let's do stuff. Let's work together, whatever. But I'm realizing that, like we talked about, everybody's in a different place, in a different stage, in a different whatever. And I'm finding myself, instead of getting annoyed by not getting something done right away, which is happening constantly, I'm leaning into my empathy, like, hey, what's happening with you? And I'm asking more questions of other people. I'm saying to people who are telling me they're in bad places, like, hey, let's get on the call. I'm finding myself leaning into that nurturing part of me, but also that empathy where it's like, people react in these things in two ways. It's all fear-based. It's either you're the guy who hoards the toilet paper or you're the person who leans into kindness, right? And I'm finding myself leaning into my kindnesses, which is making me feel better about me within all of my own stressors and craziness, right? But it's also like, I think it's actually being helpful to other people. The more we connect, the more, the conversation I had with you the other day was awesome sauce, right? I mean, I'm feeling grateful for all of these conversations. That camaraderie that everybody's referencing, it really matters. And whether it's my mother's 80th birthday and we're on Zoom and we're all like weeping and crying and saying happy birthday, or it's you and I having a conversation, I'm thankful for these conversations. I'm thankful for these connections, and I'm thankful for the way they're making me feel, because I end up, after all of them, feeling hopeful. And I think there's a low supply of hope when you stay isolated. So that was a long way of saying I'm thankful for this.
Yeah. No, this coming together is good. Out of respect for everyone's time, I think we should end this now. I think you guys were all great and so generous. I was so thrilled that you all jumped in on this, and all the words I'm getting from the students is nothing but positive. So thank you. I think we could end this. Enjoy your day.
If any of your students have any questions for me, not that I didn't overtalk, but feel free to give out my email. I'm open to conversations.
Sure thing. It looks like everybody's good here. All right. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Stay safe.